my weekend is talking off and on with this shaman and trying to come to grips with the stories we read in this podcast, and there's actually people in real life that are way more into this stuff than we are. And on the way down to this cabin in Hocking Hills, I was perusing through the Missing 411 book, Hunters, and I went to the back of the book.
Yes.
And if anybody who's read the Missing 411 books knows that Dave Paulides doesn't really take a stance one way or the other, doesn't really speculate too much on what could be happening, and doesn't really give too many paranormal accounts, like what if people saw a ghost or a poltergeist. Doesn't go into that shit. But in the back of the book, he does recount an occurrence, an instance of one of his friends who he personally knows. I think it's Maccabee, is an optical physicist, and Professor Maccabee's wife was out hunting and witnessed not only a UFO in the sky, but also a visual distortion about.
It was their nephew or someone who witnessed the
UFO. Yeah, and
like an hour later.
Yeah, she actually witnessed a visual distortion in front of her, about 30 feet in front of her, and 20 feet up in the air. She was in a hunting stand.
And this was out by, they live
in Ohio,
outside of Lima, Ohio.
Lima,
Ohio. This happened 6 years ago, according to the book.
Yeah, and so so I want to say visual distortion. What do I mean? I mean, like, you're looking at the movie character, the Predator. That
I can set it up a little. I have the book open right now.
Sure. Yeah, read it, please.
Paragraph.
Yeah.
Okay, her name's Jan. Okay, so Jan sat down in her seat. Okay, she was bow hunting up in like a tree stand. So she sat down in her seat approximately 5:30 p.m. The timestamp on the photo she took establishes this. She's taking photos with her camera on her phone.
It was a BlackBerry Pearl, by the way.
Correct. I used to have one of those, but anyways. Back probably around 2010 as well, but that's neither here nor there. As she was getting situated, Jan started to text a musician friend. Apparently she was booked musicians, I don't know. Mm-hmm. And at apparently 6:21 p.m., Jan started to take a few photos of the ground in the area around her tree stand. The conditions were very good as the sun were at her back, and she was facing east. It was about this time the strangers started to encompass the area around her. As she texted her friend, the woods all of a sudden gone silent, which we hear a lot of when predators are around. And all noise ceased. Prior to this, the birds were chirping, bugs were making sounds, and the leaves were rustling. She started to think about things in her mind. She thought it might be some predator, like a black panther or a bear. Are there panthers in Ohio?
Well, they have mountain lions now.
And
they released mountain lions in the Hocking Hills area to take care of the coyote problem.
Well, then when you do it, when it's your mountain lion problem,
release the bears.
Release the bears, and then when there's bears, release Bigfoot.
Yeah, exactly. Release elephants.
And
Truckosaurus.
Yeah.
And we'll clone T-Rex to take care of the elephant.
Exactly. Keeps going up the chain.
And I don't know. Just nuke the place. But Jan still had her phone in her hand when she somehow became aware of something in the trees approximately 15 to 25 feet in front of her. She described it as one of the most unusual things she's seen in her life. It wasn't clear. It was as though a space around it was distorted and you could almost see through it. She said it was about 15 feet. She was about 15 feet up in her tree, and the object was nearly 25 feet in the air in the trees across from her. She told me it reminded her of like a giant item wrapped in saran wrap. So
which
it goes on.
Is the predator.
Right, yeah. Well, it goes on in the story. The professor did some analysis of the photo. She took several... I guess before that, they had gotten a message on Facebook from their nephew, and they said at band practice around 7:50 that night, everybody at the marching band of the high school, which was about a mile away from where she was hunting, saw this white yellow disc hover around in the sky for about 5 minutes and then just kind of shoot off to the distance.
And so the photo she took, I read this several times, and the reason why this is important and the reason why it's important that her husband is an optical physicist is that the BlackBerry Pearl takes photos in one resolution. It is, I'm paraphrasing here, about 1,000 pixels by 700 pixels. That's the default resolution. Now the picture she took of this visual distortion is roughly around 500 pixels by 400, which is impossible to take. That's not a setting on the BlackBerry Pearl at all to take that kind of photo.
I've had a
that
BlackBerry
resolution
Pearl
of
and
a
they
photo.
Who would want
suck.
to take that resolution anyway?
It's an awful resolution. So how was that photo produced if the phone itself, the software, wasn't able to generate that kind of picture in that resolution and the height and width? How was that produced? That is a true anomaly. So it goes into even like weirder stuff. Like, how does a physical
Also,
event affect software and picture resolution?
Verizon confirmed that the cell phone has no such resolution.
Yes. Exactly.
Why couldn't she have changed it afterwards? Have they checked the metadata and all this
She
stuff?
didn't change it. She didn't change the resolution of the photos at all. And so when she took the picture of the visual distortion that she saw, the saran wrap figure, by default, it changed the resolution itself. When
So
she took,
apparently, it goes kind of on some trust here because it was, the issue here with the incident is that the world's premier authority of photos and video analysis, right, analyze. Was it by a picture somebody explicitly trusts his wife? So I guess, he's trusting that his wife didn't fuck with the photos. So I imagine, I don't know why she would. But I guess the linking story with the marching band scene, the disc kind of ties into it. So he said he knows there was no altering the picture. So I'm guessing he looked at the metadata. He, as in the husband Maccabee, whatever his name is.
you can look at the properties of the photograph and in the file and see what it is. You can definitely see what the resolution is. It's bizarre. So what do we have? We have a UFO coming down to drop off an invisible creature to hunt things. That's what we have, and that creature can't affect electronics around it.
Okay, so I don't want to play this. I'll put a link in the description box for this whole podcast. I just wanted to get my point across that it's not the only thing in the world it's not the only people in the world that have protest this, that these invisible creatures are running around the woods. Clearly something's dropping them off. Movies like The Predator, a lot of these movies, Avatar, they're based around actual things. A lot of these directors have they have access to privileged information, and they make these movies based around it, and that's how they introduce it to the public. But more often than not, what they do is they add the Hollywood spin onto it, and they make these things more dangerous than what they actually are, just to create fear in the masses, so that the public will be too scared to want to face these things or find out more about them. And it all comes back to free energy, and there's too much money in fossil fuels, which fossil fuels is $30 trillion a year industry. So again, when we start looking at these beings, if we didn't fear them, we're going to want to know more about them. And because knowing more about them is literally right at our fingertips, we can know as much as we want to know about them. And it's really not hard. But by Hollywood creating this fear-based mentality and sticking fear into people, the mass population of man, women are just freaked out by this stuff, so they don't want to know more about it, and that keeps the fossil fuel and pharmaceuticals in their high place in the ecosystem, if that's what you want to call it. But that's why they do that. We're being introduced to it, but we're being introduced to the fear aspect of it, not the actual reality end of it. That being said, I'll leave a link in the description box so you guys can watch the full podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. If you hit the like button, and don't forget to subscribe.